Hi, welcome to our podcast again. And we have a wonderful guest, Rivka Sonts, an Israeli, who also lives an American, when Israeli lives in America. And she does amazing active, or more than active work. She's an activist on behalf of Israel, on behalf of the Jewish people. And I saw her amazing posts, so I was very impressed. And I asked her to come onto the show. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure. My name is Rivka Sonts. I was born in former Soviet Union, and my family had moved to Israel when I was 6 years old, and I grew up there. And then after high school, we had moved to New York, and now I'm in New Jersey. Um, I think I've always been an activist. I think it's part of the Russian Jew in me. For so many years, my family and millions of Russian Jews have been oppressed. And, well, you know the story. We couldn't leave and we couldn't practice. So that suppression is kind of in our genes. Like, I think all the Jews feel it, for so many generations, they've tried to, either kill us physically or prevent us from being Jewish. So in Russia, it wasn't physical, but it was prevent us from being Jewish and prevent us from leaving. So finally, when the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, about 3.5 million of Russian Jews left Russia. Some went to America, and the rest went to Israel. And I was fortunate to go with my family to Israel. I love growing up in Israel. I think it's the dreamland, and I returned to Israel after thousands of years. And since I remember myself, even in Israel, we used to go and do parades and demonstrate when they were wanted to give back the Golan Heights. I think I was a teenager then, and do Jerusalem Day and walk around with the flags in Jerusalem, the only capital for only one nation, the Jewish people. So then later, when I moved to New York, I had worked with a bunch of Jewish organizations, small and large. My favorite one was the Teret Kohanim. If you're familiar with it, are you?
Mhm.
Are you familiar with Teret Kohanim?
I think so. Tell us the audience about that.
Yeah, so we had bought properties in the Muslim and Christian quarters. Um, and we had Jewish families who wanted to live there, and we had made all the arrangements. So I was in the New York side where we had raised the funds for it. So when I took a tour to Israel to see those families are incredible. They have this in Hebrew we call mesirut nefesh, like they're just their whole being is about settling the land, and it's about fulfilling that Jewish dream that we yearned for so many years, for thousands of years, to come back to our homeland. And it's just miraculous. So that was one of my favorite Jewish organizations that I worked for. I've worked for, other big organizations like the Federation, the Jewish Agency, um, but definitely the small, intimate organizations are my favorite. And right now, since the war, I felt like I couldn't just stay quiet. We do have a business here, and I couldn't just be quiet about how I feel, fighting for the Jewish people. So I've started bringing strong Jewish voices here to speak to communities, to strengthen Jewish communities here in America. So, and more recently, I've also been working with producer Raphael Shore on his film Tragic Awakening about the root cause of anti-Semitism. So I'm very passionate about fighting anti-Semitism, and I'll do it any day, anytime, anywhere, loud and proud. So
Loud and proud. Excellent.
yeah,
Sounds great. You mentioned before that you're Russian, so yeah, it's true. The Russian soul is a special soul, the soul that is heavily known to be in activism. You know, the Zionists, the early Zionists were Russians. They know the ones who really made Israel into Israel. You know, when
yeah,
Herzl started to do political Zionism, before that there was a cultural Zionism, and before that there was religious Zionism. And Herzl did not know which people would really be the ones who would do the uplifting of the nation per se. He didn't. First of all, he didn't know what was going on until the 1890s.
mm-hmm.
But when he did find out, he was still always amazed by the Russian Jewish community, because the Russian soul has a special soul. That's because it's always been involved in so many types of revolutions. And Zionism is probably the greatest revolution there is. Unfortunately, people they're giving a bad name to it in the last few months, last 2 years. But that's not only the national liberation movement of Jewish people. I would also say it's the national liberation of all indigenous people, of all humanity, because we're the only people in the history of the world that came back to its land, to its language, to its army, to its government that it hadn't had in 2,000 years. So all those who always try to advocate for indigenous people are, are take great faith and great confidence and great inspiration from Zionism. And then people think Zionism is only about the Jewish people, but look at it carefully. Zionism has uplifted the Arab population in the Middle East. The Arab man, the Arab woman, the Arab child has more rights in Israel than in. But again, it's propaganda, it's PR. So you mentioned before that when the war began, you want to do your part, and the
Yeah,
people don't understand, which you do understand, which I like very much, which is to really admire, that this war is not only a war about military conquering or military defense, but basically a PR war. So if you can tell the audience, why PR is so important and people should do their part and learn of what it is to fight all these haters on the internet and what your organization is doing, what Rabbi Schwartz is doing as well.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, our war is, it's on so many fronts. It's obviously the physical war that's happening in Israel, and the Jewish people are fighting for its survival. I don't think, maybe so many people understand. It's not like, here in America we have an elective army, like, people can choose to go to the army, and usually wars are not happening, at the borders here. I mean, there's other issues inside, but in Israel, it's different because you're surrounded by all this, countries and hate. And it's just, sometimes it's like mind-boggling. And I think that's what the question that Rabbi Shore is trying to answer in the movie, Tragic Awakening. If anyone is interested, you can go to tragicawakening.com or Rabbi Shore's website, and you can find it there. So it's not available on streaming, but you can sign up for an online view. So, it's trying to answer, like, why is all this unexplainable hate? There's less than 10 million people in this little land, the size of New Jersey, in the Middle East, surrounded by all these powerful, mighty nations. And why is all this hate? Where is it all coming from? And part of this answer is actually a bit spiritual. When we got the Torah in Har Sinai, we got Sinha. So, the Jewish people carry that light, the light that they carry, the of morality, and I think it contradicts with some of the other values of the nation that are surrounding us. So it's a bit unexplainable, but our work is so much greater. I think, first of all, we have to educate ourselves, our youth, um, about, you know, about the truth, about our values, what the Jewish values are.
Mhm.
And obviously we have to educate, our children, like, also about the history. And, like a lot of people have said that before, I think peace would only come when they teach their children to love more than they teach their children to hate. I
Mhm.
mean, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And there is a slight shift, I think, in the region, um, thanks to President Trump, I think, of, like the Abraham Accords and, countries that trying to normalize their relations with Israel, and they are changing their curriculum. So for a while, since Israel was established, a lot of the curriculum in all the countries in the Middle East, would dehumanize the Jewish people in Israel. And now slowly, those countries who are in the Abraham Accords and possibly other ones are changing it. So I think that's like, the core solution is to re-educate the entire population of the Middle East that Israel is not the source of all the world's problem.
Mhm.
It's the opposite, which is what we bring to the world is morality and light into the nation. So when they realize that, we're not there yet, but when they would realize that, um, and re-educate their children, maybe then we'll have more chances for peace. And back to your question, what I'm doing with PR. So we are trying to bring this movie, as well as other initiatives, to communities around America, like Jewish and not Jewish, it doesn't matter who it is. Kind of, it goes back through history, kind of to understand, also through the Holocaust, kind of to understand this unexplainable hate for Jews. And people, don't really get it. And they get their information from, especially the young generation, they get their information from TikTok and whatever, Instagram, whatever things they're watching. And the media is so biased, is so anti-Israel because it's popular to hate the Jews, and it's popular to be pro-Palestinian, and it's popular to wear this kafiyas. And it's sad, but we're not gonna stop fighting. So we do what we can. I mean, there's some people who say Israel is losing the PR war. Yes, Israel, could do better as a state with PR. And there are a bunch of other initiatives that I'm involved in. That one of them is called Commando Asbara,
Mhm.
um, that is aiming exactly to do that. It works to kind of we get ambassadors who will share messages on social media, um, through the organization, that are really telling the truth. Like, you just have to keep at it. You have to keep fighting. You have to, tell the truth on social media, and in anywhere you can, because eventually the truth will prevail. There's so much you can do with lies, and their claim to the land is a lie. And the claim, all the evil claims about the Jews, it's all a lie. So if we keep pondering the truth, eventually I think things will shift.
Right. I
But it's
myself,
a process.
besides being a rabbi, am also an historian, a writer, and a filmmaker, and heavily into activism. In 2014, I
Mhm.
organized with Jeremy Derry and Maya Friedman the first March rally in New York City against anti-Semitism. We fought against Hamas and that time ISIS. And I'll send you a clip of that. And we had the march rally protesting against MSNBC and CNN. Now, in terms of the anti-Semitism, besides the spiritual element of it, there's also another practical element of it. If you notice, in countries that where there's no Christianity and there's no Islam, there's no anti-Semitism. You don't have anti-Semitism in India. You didn't have until recently in China. You didn't have it. You didn't have it in Japan, and so forth. So the question is, how come only in those countries where you have Christianity and Islam? So I'll give you an example. Suppose you have a store. It's a very good store, and you have a lot of people coming to your store. Now you have a competitor. Competitor makes the same store as yours and starts selling your product. But the competitor has two choices or three choices: either to say, I'm not going to compete with you, or join forces with you, or to make you look bad. So the second competitor to monotheism was Christianity. Christianity began to say, hey, we're the new monotheists. That's the Old Testament. We're the New Testament. We're the real truth. So, of course, they had to make the old store, the Judaism and Jews, look bad. Now, if you think about it, about 700 years later came Islam. Islam came now, the new monotheism, the new store on the block. So they had to make both stores look bad. They had to make Judaism look bad and Christianity look bad, because we're the new truth. So it's this competition. So from that particular practical point of view, you have in terms of socioeconomic reason, religious reasons to bring people to your religion and so forth, you have to make the mother religion look bad. So you'll see whether it's Christians and whether it's Muslims, you'll always see anti-Semitism. As for the other point you mentioned before, will they accept us? In terms of that when they learn to love their children more than they hate us. The question, we don't understand the reality of Islam. There's extremists in Islam that believe that hating is a wonderful thing. It's so to speak, a mitzvah. It's a commandment. You have to hate your enemy. You have to hate the infidel. So, and with the idea that if you hate the infidel, kill the infidel, you'll go to heaven. So it's for them. It's a religious jihad. It's a religious war. To change that, it takes a lot of education, because you're changing whole people's mind in terms of religion. It's a whole new way of looking, so to speak, about religion. That's comes interesting. We mentioned before the other countries in the Middle East, in terms who do want to make peace with us, Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and so forth. Not Qatar yet. Hopefully Qatar one day.
Right.
But they begin to realize from a socioeconomic point of view, as Patriot said in the 1950s, one day they will make peace, because for the reason just of economic situation to help themselves. That's coming about. They see the 21st century is AI, everything's fusion is being changed, they're losing their control over oil. So things begin to wake up for them. But take the other side, take the Shiite Muslims, taking in Iran, as opposed to the Sunni Muslims in Saudi Arabia. The Shiite Muslims believe in the extreme of that they're looking for world chaos, of destroying the world, and they'll bring the Mahdi, they'll bring their Messiah. And then you mentioned before about PR and so forth. So if I can tell you one thing interesting about Israeli PR. If you look very carefully, 1930s, 40s, and 50s, until 1967, in fact, even 1977, Israeli PR was wonderful. It was amazing. In fact, in 1967, I made it in a thesis about this, that when the war began, 60 war, the French wanted to help the Jewish state. In 1967, things began to change, because who became prime minister was Begin. And that was a tool for the extreme. It's for the extreme in terms of the anti-Zionists, because see, look, a terrorist becomes prime minister of Israel, because Begin was known as quote unquote as a terrorist. He was the right wing with the King David Hotel. And that was a great, so to speak, ammunition for them. And then you had 1982 with Lebanon, Sabra Shatila, everything began to change. Arafat became wise. He began to realize that he has to become the little David, and because now we became the Goliath. And the American jury, 1982 and onwards, began to distance themselves from Israel. How can you go into Lebanon and kill thousands of people and allow Sabra Shatila, the massacre that happened there? We're the Jewish state, we're the Jewish people. And that began to make a fracture between the American jury and Israeli jury. So that also has to be taken into account. And now in about 2016, I made an app called Fight BDS. Roseanne Barr funded it, that BDS, where basically go on that app, you go on the app, and you can get immediate answers, how to answer someone, and how to give them proper responses and retorts to any type of accusation made against Israel. But nonetheless, the biggest problem is we have is that the Israeli government doesn't recognize in the last 30 years, as it did back in 1960s and 50s and early 70s, that PR is the ultimate weapon. You win hearts and minds. So I'll tell you one story, and then I'll ask you a question. It was back in the 1990s, and there was a lot of bombings in Israel. So I had an idea of making a film project whereby before and after, a child who could dance was blown up. It was in a bus bombing, and now she can't dance anymore. Or a teenager who had an IQ of like 170 was in another bombing. Now he can't think anymore. Before and after, to show the tragedy of all these type of bombings that was happening here in Israel. So I called up someone, the Minister of Public Affairs in Israel, and I asked him, "What do you think of the idea?" I said, "It's a wonderful idea." I said, "Do you have a budget for it?" But remember, this before videos were made, basically. This is back in the 1990s. And he said, "Sorry, we don't have that." I said, "I don't understand." I said to him, what are you talking about? Don't you have a budget for PR? Don't you have a budget for media? He says, "No, we don't." That's a shift. So we have to get not only the organizations that you're doing, which is tremendous, but we have to get the Israeli government to understand the value of PR.
Yeah.
So that's the question to ask you. What do you think we need to do to wake up the ministers in the Knesset, wake up the ministers in the cabinet to understand that you have to win the hearts and minds, and that they have to make some type of program and give funding to your organization, to other organizations, to make it that this is the key. It's not just winning a military battle; it's winning hearts and minds, because we have to prevent this terrible stain that's happening now on our people because of what's happening of this propaganda war.
Yeah. We're definitely a few organizations that I'm involved in. We've been in touch with the Ministry of Diaspora, and very excited about the idea. The ideas about the funding was more like, we'll match it if you raise such and such, we'll match, which is a progress. But like you said, it should be a priority. It shouldn't be any if you match it, if and but and when. It should be, wow, this is an incredible idea. You want to teach people about the root cause of anti-Semitism. You want to improve Hasbara on a large global scale with the Commando Hasbara. We already reached over 1 million views of pro-Israel messages. And the organization was just started by a couple of tech guys from Israel who wanted to do something. There is all these great ideas from people like Commando Hasbara, like Rabbi Shor, who's been doing, this is his 18 documentary. And he actually has a book too called, he released a book last year, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew. I don't know if you read it or not, but it's great.
I read it. I want to read it.
Yeah. And he's coming here actually on another tour in September for 1 week to New York, New Jersey area. And we will be going, one of the talks will be going to Congress to try to show the movie to staffers and to representatives to educate them about the anti-Semitism, how anti-Semitism is really anti-Zionism. It's just it's morphed into anti-Zionism, which is, we all know that it's the same thing now. For years, they tried to deny it, to say that anti-Zionism is just being critical about Israel, and anti-Semitism is the hate of Jews. It's actually not, because if someone doesn't believe that Jews are allowed to have their own separate nation, they're anti-Semites. So that's what we're doing, a little bit that we can do, but I really wish that that we would have like a real plan of how to how it's just crucial to let the world know, teach the world about anti-Semitism, to teach the world that about how Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and how everyone has equal rights, and all the humane side of Israel, and it's so important. How would I do it? Um, it's would require like some shift change in the Israeli government, maybe with together with some organizations who are leading this efforts. We would have to have real change. Maybe I'm not sure if it's the place for Governor Huckabee, but we could sure let him know that as American Jews, we want to see more of that, and
I
maybe
have I have an idea.
that could help.
Maybe you and I and a few other people come together, make a Zoom conference together, and work out a plan. Because I'm heavily into that, in activism and fighting anti-Semitism and finding a whole new way of approaching it. We have to use it for our political means, our marketing, our
Right.
talents in Hasbara, as you mentioned, Hasbara, use all different AI technology, and use the different types of ways to wake up people. Let me give you an example.
Mhm.
You remember Rabbi Eben? So Rabbi Eben was the first. Rabbi Eben. Remember Rabbi Eben? Rabbi Eben? Rabbi
Yeah.
Eben. Okay. He was interviewed in 1958
Mhm.
by Mike Wallace in 60 Minutes. Now you see the brilliance of how Rabbi Eben was able to take a statement and change and flip on his head within a second. So Mike Wallace says to him, there are 15 members, 15, 1-5, of the Knesset who don't want to have peace with the Arabs. Now,
Mhm.
basically, anyone would have that type of question that we've seen on the Pierce Morgan show and other Morgan shows, will start saying, "What are you talking about? Israel's this and Israel's that, and so forth." Ab even didn't do that. He simply said the following: "It says, Mr. Wallace, you're right. There are 15 members who do not want to make peace, but there are 105 who do." The brilliance of that is incredible. Took
Right.
he took the ammunition, he took the gun, so to speak, the bullet, and he twisted around against Mike Wallace. That's the brilliance of how we have to analyze and how we have to fight against anti-Semitism. It's not by yelling and screaming. It's by clever rhetoric, the rhetoric that was basically Abba even had, and other great ones like Golda Meir and so forth. That's what we need back in our messaging to those out there. And we have one more left. Let me see the time. We have another few minutes. Have you gone yourself with anti-Semitism?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You had any experience with anti-Semitism? You yourself or your friends have gone in the last
I mean, yeah, plenty. I also like I'm a very I wear my Zionism outside, if you could see. Also drive an Israeli flag outside my car. So I mean, nothing severely happened, but I definitely feel the hate when I drive into Rutgers University, where we had the encampment here, one of the encampments during, last year during President Biden's administration, where all the universities had the encampment. So that was one incident. But yeah, and recently I went to was a hearing on anti-Semitism bill in New Jersey. Essentially, it's the IHRA would defines what anti-Semitism is, and tries to protect the Jewish people, so everyone is on the same page, law enforcement, colleges, everyone. And you would think it's about Jewish people and anti-Semitism, and guess who showed up to the hearing? So besides other Jews who showed up to the hearing, we also had Neturei Karta, who showed up to the hearing, along with pro-Palestinians with a lot of kafias and.
Can you tell the audience who they are in Neturei Karta?
Yeah, so Neturei Karta is an extreme group that more like a cult that doesn't believe, doesn't believe in the state of Israel. And they not just don't believe it, they actually go as far as being friends with the enemies, with Iran, with other populations that hate the Jewish people and hate Israel. And they make very good optics for them because they dress like Jews, they look like Jews. As far as I'm concerned, they're not real Jews because a real Jew cannot be friends with the enemies who are trying to annihilate us. So
that, by the way, is the hypocrisy, if I can interrupt you, in Neturei Karta. And the Neturei Karta is basing themselves on a Gemara. In the Gemara, there was 3 oaths that was made. Oath number 1, that the non-Jews would never attack us. That was their oath. 2 oaths that we made, that we wouldn't go en masse back to Israel and we wouldn't conquer the land. So what happens without permission of the non-Jewish world? So you could say that the oaths were broken because we see last 2,000 years that the non-Jewish world has attacked us. On the other hand, you could say, well, the League of Nations and UN and the San Remo nations gave us the right to go back to the land. And we never attacked by means of war, so we didn't break our oaths. But they believe is that if we break these oaths, then the Mashiach won't come. And here's the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is that they really do want a Jewish state. That's what they really do want, a Jewish state, but they want a Jewish state under the guidance of the Torah of the Mashiach. And at that time, they will have everything they want to have a pure Jewish state. But they won't admit that and tell you that. So when they say they're anti-Zion, anti-Jewish state, it's only because they're looking for the long term of fulfilling those 2 or those 3 types of promises, that the oath that was taken in the Gemara, the Talmud. And that's the hypocrisy. But the last part is that what you mentioned before, even though you may believe in these things, you cannot inform and turn your fellow Jew over to your enemy. And that is what's going on. And we have 1 more minute. If you can just address, what you're doing in terms of how you can get people to join you and where to find you in terms of your organization.